Today, we're breaking away from the usual Python programming routine. No more mundane scripts or number crunching. Instead, we're going to have some fun by building a game. That's right. We're going to create a simple yet addictive game in Python that you can play and share. So power up your computer and let's get coding. First things first, let's set up our environment. If you don't already have Python installed, head over to python.org and download the latest version. I'll wait. Just kidding. This is a video. I won't actually wait, but you get the idea. Once you've got Python up and running, you'll also want to install Pygame, which is a library that makes game development in Python a breeze. To install Pygame, just open your terminal or command prompt and type pip install Pygame. Hit enter and let the magic happen. Alright, now that we're all set up, it's time to jump into our code editor. I'm using VS Code, but feel free to use whichever editor makes you happy. Let's create a new Python file called game.py and start coding. The first thing we need to do is import Pygame and initialize it, using pygame.init. Now let's set up the game window. We'll create a window that's 800 by 600 pixels, and give it a cool title like My First Game. Here's how you do that. Now we have a blank canvas to work with, but don't worry, we're about to add some life to it. Next, we need to create the game loop. This is where all the magic happens. The game loop is responsible for updating the game state, handling events like key presses, and rendering the game to the screen. Here's a simple version of the game loop. So as you can see here, we've set up a simple game loop that keeps our game running. The running equals true line is what starts the loop, and as long as running is true, the game will continue. Inside the loop, we're checking for events using pygame.event.get. If the user tries to close the window by clicking the X button, pygame.quit is triggered, and we set running to false, which exits the loop and closes the game. Next, we have the screen.fill line, which fills the entire screen with black each frame, essentially giving us a blank canvas to draw on. Finally, pygame.display.update refreshes the display to show any changes we've made. This basic structure forms the backbone of our game loop, allowing us to keep our game responsive and continuously updating. Now, when you run the script, you'll get a black window that stays open until you close it. It might not look like much now, but trust me, we're getting there. Every game needs a player, right? So let's add one. We'll create a simple player object, just a rectangle for now, and make it move based on keyboard input. In this part of the code, we're adding a player character to our game and enabling basic movement. We start by defining some variables. Player_x and player_y set the initial position of the player on the screen. Player_width and player_height define the size of the player, and player_color gives the player a nice red color. The player_speed controls how fast the player moves. Inside the game loop, we first check for any quit events, just like before. Then we handle player movement using pygame.key.get_pressed, which checks if the left or right arrow keys are being pressed. If the left arrow is pressed, we decrease player_x to move the player left, and if the right arrow is pressed, we increase player_x to move the player right. After handling movement, we fill the screen with black to reset it, and then we draw the player on the screen using Pygame drawRect, which draws a rectangle at the player's current position with the specified color and size. Finally, Pygame display update refreshes the screen to show these changes. This creates a simple, movable player character that we can control with the arrow keys. Alright, so here's a quick but crucial update. Previously, we had the event handling outside the main game loop, which caused the window to freeze and become unresponsive. To fix this, move the call to pygame.event.get inside the game loop. This change ensures that our game constantly checks for new events, like closing the window or pressing keys, keeping everything running smoothly. Let's add an enemy that the player has to avoid. This will also be a simple rectangle for now, but you can get creative and replace it with actual sprites later on. Now, the enemy will move down the screen, and if it touches the player, the game will stop. Here, we define the enemy's starting position and its properties, similar to our player. The enemy starts at the top of the screen and will move downwards as the game progresses. This part of the code updates the enemy's position by increasing its Y value, making it move down the screen. If the enemy goes off the screen, it resets back to the top to keep the game challenging. Finally, We draw the enemy on the screen using its current position and properties. And here's where things get interesting. We've added a simple collision detection mechanism. If the player's rectangle intersects with the enemy's rectangle, the game stops. This gives our game a challenge, avoiding the enemies as they descend. You can replace the rectangles with actual images, add more enemies, and even introduce a scoring system. The possibilities are endless. And there you have it, folks. A basic game made entirely with Python and Pygame. Of course, this is just the beginning. You can build on this foundation to create something truly amazing. Whether it's adding sound effects, more levels, or even multiplayer, the sky's the limit. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe for more tech adventures, and share your game creations with us in the comments below.